Welcome to the Journey to CEO Success, where we explore the real stories, challenges, and turning points that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm your co-host, Melissa Saunders, and I'm joined today by Patrick Tian, award-winning serial entrepreneur, renowned CEO coach, and best-selling author, recognized by the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon. Patrick's latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller and the inspiration behind this podcast. Patrick, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you.
And our guest today is Bryan Fischer, who in some ways is the accidental consultant. Bryan studied English Lit, Rhetoric, and Communications as an undergraduate and then was hired by a strategy consulting firm based in London. Over the last 3 decades, he's worked in a variety of environments focused on helping leadership teams build high-performance cultures. Bryan, welcome to the show. Excited to hear your journey.
Thanks, Melissa. It's great to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bryan, first, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure.
Totally awesome. So, this podcast is all about helping our CEO friends have a more joyful and successful life. So before we get into your personal journey, why don't we take about 5 minutes and share with us about your firm? What do you actually do today?
So my firm is called One Step Beyond.
Yes.
And it was sort of a cheeky name inspired by a couple of different things. But, one of the most important things probably was just to help people not think about trying to eat the entire elephant, but how do we get beyond where we are? And then how do we continue that process?
So kind of one step at a time, one step ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And my business itself, Patrick, is made up of, I guess, sort of a 3-legged stool, if you will. I've got my core consulting companies because I really want to stay close to the work getting done so I can feel what that feels like. Don't want to lose sight of that at all. Then I facilitate a number of peer networks. I've got a CEO network that I work with. I've got a group of marketing managers that I work with and have for a long, long time. And then I've got 2 cohorts of emerging leaders going on. So a leadership development program. It's a 17-month program. So there's always one group in year 1 and another group in year 2. So that's the second leg is the peer networks. And then the last part is executive coaching. Sometimes I'm doing relatively very little of it. Sometimes I'm doing more, but I love that one-on-one interaction. I love that opportunity to help to, try to have a big impact on an individual.
That's wonderful. Bryan, I've known you a long time. I think we go back at least a decade. That being said, your journey, your career spans 4 decades across multiple countries. And you're an English Lit major. So let's talk about your life journey, man. Like you have lots of joy and lots of success. Tell us, how'd that happen?
All true. So boy, the 90-degree curve came right out of school when I was, I was thinking about potentially graduate school, maybe going to law school. Not sure what I had in mind there. I was going to do some journalism and some writing in the meantime, but I interviewed with a strategy consulting firm based in London, the UK, that was looking to set up an office in Pittsburgh. And they actually really liked, here's me, 22 years old, right? And they're telling me, we really like the fact that you understand stories and you can figure out what's important and what's not important. And you're good at asking questions, not just giving answers and all these things. And as a very gullible 22-year-old, I'm nodding my head, right? I'm not going to disagree with any of this.
I'm just trying to get a job, right?
Yeah, exactly. My parents will be so delighted. So I ended up getting the job. Started as a lowly, what was called a research associate, and and it was a strategy consulting firm, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 clients. And I just immediately was really taken by the business world and this role. So big departure right out of the chute.
And you were always based in Pittsburgh. They didn't relocate you to, you've worked in different countries, but they didn't relocate you to Europe or to London.
I didn't relocate in that first job. I worked with clients in different parts of the world, South America and Europe, and certainly all over North America, but stayed based in Pittsburgh. But I've had 2 stints of living and working abroad, and the second of which was 4 years spent with Deloitte Consulting in Budapest. And at that point, worked in a number of other countries and in different industries. Coming from Western Pennsylvania, manufacturing is kind of in the blood. So Deloitte was a nice opportunity to work with some service companies, some technology companies.
So what took you to all these places? Because every time you're given an opportunity like that, you can say yes, you can say no, right? And you said yes. So you've said yes, and therefore you've had a very full and exploratory life, I would say. You've gone to different countries, all kinds of different industries. So what causes you to say yes and you're happy, you're joyful and you're successful?
Yeah. So one of the beautiful kind of footnotes to all this is I became a father on July the 4th in Budapest. So yeah, so lots of not just work experiences, but
Yeah.
life experiences that have been fun. I think just staying open, Patrick, that initial experience, which I hadn't anticipated at all, I think really just kind of me into the fact that I should stay open-minded about things. So after 4 years with that strategy consulting firm, I just felt like I wanted to kind of take a step back and I didn't want to just stay on the same path. I wanted to sort of think things through. I actually it was my last trip to Europe with the firm, and I thought I'm going to go somewhere I've never been before, and I might never ever go again. And I won't give you all the background on it because it was just a series of odd events. But somebody basically set me up with a really interesting sounding itinerary for Budapest in the spring of 1989. And when I went
Yeah.
there was so much change in the air and there were so many interesting things going on. It took a while, but it worked on me to say, I think you need to go back there. And I did. And I didn't know if it would be for 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3
Yeah.
years, but I ended up getting married, becoming a father, and sticking around for a while.
So you met your wife over there.
Mm-hmm.
So when something told you to go back there, you hadn't met her yet.
Right. No, exactly. Had not.
Okay. So that wasn't the something
Now,
that told
the
you.
first trip to Budapest was all of a long weekend, but it was
Yeah.
and it was over that summer that I thought, I think I want to go back. And I don't even know exactly why, but I'm kind of in explore mode here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're open, you're curious, and you are exploring. Coincidentally, you're one step, right? One step
Mhm.
beyond. One to
Yeah,
take
that was
one
my
step
next step
beyond.
at that
Yeah.
time.
Just take the next step. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So let's talk about what lessons you have learned over your career. I'm curious as to what allows you to be so exploratory going to different countries. Is it because you're looking for new experiences, or are you just open and willing to say, that's okay, I'll get there, I'll figure it out. What is it that helps you do that?
Yeah. Not sure. I mean, I really think as much as anything was growing up with parents who were really, really encouraging, really accepting, and said, hey, try it. If it doesn't work out, just start over again. So I
Yeah.
never really had any fear of trying something new, and up to including, I guess, once I felt like I had earned a few stripes, I guess, along the way, starting my own firm, in my mid to late 40s.
Yeah.
And it's just been a very, very joyful ride. And I think in that sense, one of the big breakthrough thoughts that I had personally might not sound like a breakthrough to others, but it was about 2 or 3 years into that. I'm now, I think, in my 18th or 19th year of working on my own. And I just woke up one morning and I had this realization that I was like, you've got the easiest, best job in the world. You have no agenda whatsoever except to help other people achieve their goals, achieve their hopes and dreams. And it really, I think early in my career when I was sort of building, it was just so much about being smart or seeming smart and
Mm.
positioning and messaging and all this sort of stuff. And this was just a really freeing thing to say, Bryan, the direction that your life is going is helping other people every day, all the time.
Sounds like you connected your your skill also with your passion and also what makes you happy. Like I know so many people who wake up, and actually there's very few people that wake up and say, love the job I have. Couldn't imagine doing anything else. Grateful I'm doing the job I have. But I think I just described you. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. And I hope so. Yeah. No, and like I say, I mean, it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
But that was, that was just like, that was the dawn of a new day for me.
Yeah. And, that's some of the advice I give my children that, hey, just try it. When they were in university, college, they would be concerned like, hey, if I do this, I might waste a slot, right? I waste a class if I don't like this. And I would say, it's okay. Just try it because, I would say to them, hey, you're in college and it's the best time to learn and take risks because there's really no consequences to a risk not going well if it's a class that you didn't like. But now you know you don't want a career in that area. I used to always tell them that go out
Yeah,
and
I've told
take
my
risks.
kids that, I think the 20s is the time to experiment and not only find out hopefully what you really love, but also to eliminate some things, right?
Yes,
And
that's
sometimes
right.
you have to have those experiences says, okay, I cannot imagine what would have happened if I'd gone to law school. That to me feels like it would have been a big waste of time for me personally. So
Well,
yeah,
you,
I
you
think that,
also your specialty is the combination of leadership and execution, from what I can see. So you and I are very, very similar in that. Today, when you work with CEOs and executive teams, what advice do you give them, or what do you see as a pattern for their continued success, but also bringing in joy? What is the pattern you see that gives them both the success and joy?
Yeah. So I can think of, as I'm sure you can, a lot of examples anywhere along that continuum, right? I think the folks that are on that side of the continuum where they do experience both success and joy. I think there's a few things, sort of from the business perspective, and then maybe a couple of others from the personal perspective. From the business perspective, I'm just finding more and more that accountability is a key word for the CEOs and leadership teams I work. And it oftentimes to them feels like trying to hold water in their hands. You can keep most of it, but a lot of it spills out on the floor. And that's the stuff you end up worrying about. I further started to realize over the last year or two that I really think one of the keys to achieving high levels of accountability for senior leadership teams is to set clear expectations. That a lot of times the lack of accountability isn't due to lack of effort or lack of focus on people's part,
Yeah.
but they didn't fully understand what the expectation was. So I work with a lot of top people to make sure that they're really, really clear on what they're expecting from themselves, from their organization, from individual people, and that they live that. And then the other part is celebrate success. I've worked with so many people over the years that are just very determined to take the next hill and the next hill and the next hill and the next hill, right? And you've got to turn around and look at the distance that you've covered, take pride in that, and share that, those feelings of success and those feelings of positivity, and turn them into encouragement for more good things.
Yes, yes, that is good. You're one step beyond. It is easy to fall into the trap of I don't have time to celebrate, right? A lot of hard charging CEOs, especially the younger ones, they don't take the time to celebrate. It's like, let's go to the next thing. So being able to celebrate success is key. So I love what you said about accountability, to me, if you're working with somebody that just doesn't want to get stuff done for you, that's an HR problem, right? That's an HR problem. But most cases, things didn't get done, like you said, because of the wrong expectations or not fully understanding the objective clearly. And I've found, frankly, sometimes the leaders didn't even understand how they need to support the person that they gave the work to. So to me, it's like expectations are both sides. Like if I gave you a job, what's the expectation I have of you? But you might also have some expectations of me as to how I should be helping you, supporting you, or not, right? But I think sometimes the discussion doesn't happen. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, in a couple of recent coaching scenarios, I was feeling that kind of a gap. And what I did was I asked both parties. So the person who said, "Hey, I'd really like you to coach this person that reports to me. I think they're capable of really high performance. We're not quite getting there." And my coaching philosophy is basically pretty simple. I think everybody has untapped potential, and I'd like to help you realize more of yours, is really what it kind of comes down to me. So in a couple of recent scenarios, what I did was I said, "Hey, I understand the company has clearly defined their core values and lives them pretty thoroughly within the business, but people have core values also.
Mm.
And I think maybe you should share your values with each other." And you run into these situations where maybe one of the people is very detailed oriented and very precise, and the other person is more creative and open minded and doesn't exactly, tie up every last loose end. Well, that's okay. Both of them can bring value to the situation in each way, but we need to make sure that it somehow fits
Mm.
together in a way that's successful and feels good to both sides of it. I occasionally tell a story from my many years ago in Hungary, because my first year or so, I was doing a bunch of different things. I was teaching English. I was working with a couple small consulting firms. I was on my own. So trying to figure things out. And at one point I was sort of teaching business English to a guy whose English was pretty good, but he was multilingual, and he and his brother had both won Olympic gold medals in fencing. So a very high
Wow.
performing person,
Wow.
somebody, has commitment and discipline and all this stuff. And as I say, his English was really good. He was just looking to get better in a business context. And I would sort of help him through something, and he would look at me and go, "But I know exactly what I was trying to say." I would say, "No, I totally understand that, but I just don't think it's going to come across to the other party that way." And I sometimes share that jokingly with CEOs, who are convinced they've been absolutely clear. And it's like,
Yes.
well, how's that working for you?
That's right.
Maybe
That's
you
right.
weren't as clear as you thought you were.
Yeah. And you think you were absolutely clear. But the question is really, did the other person receive it
Right.
correctly?
Right.
Right. And there could be
Exactly.
a lot of reasons why the other person didn't receive it correctly. One
Hmm.
is you could have chosen a metaphor that the other person dislikes and already hits a mental psychological block to listen to anything else that you've said, or I don't really know. All I know is that in scenarios like that, you've got to own it. You've got to say, hey, I'm sharing something and the other person didn't understand it. How can I share it again in a way that is more beneficial to them?
Yep. And look, I can be as guilty of it as anybody, right? Our heads get filled with ideas but conveying them and being really super articulate and clear, it can be challenging.
Yeah. So this podcast is about joy and success, and I'm curious over the last 30 some years of using your 30 some years as a lens, what do you see? You probably work just like me. You probably work with some clients that did not have both, unfortunately, and some that had both. And what do you see as a pattern that we could take away to say, oh, we want both joy and success? How do we do that?
Hmm. Yeah, I have to tell you, Patrick, I've been pretty selective for a while now. I
Yes.
think it feels like if both of those things are not in place, I will just say to people, I don't think I would be successful in this environment. There's no shortage of really smart people in the world, right? And I don't know that I've ever worked with a client team that didn't have the intellectual horsepower to
Yeah.
do what they were trying to do. But so what I try to pay more and more attention to as I go along is what's the emotional intelligence of this group?
Mm,
I'm really convinced that increasingly, and I think this has been true for a long time, but I just do feel that increasingly I'm finding that companies and teams that collaborate well, go figure, seem to perform at a really high level consistently. And those that struggle just end up in that gap between the collaboration trying to fix things. So
mm.
those are some of the things that I look for. And yeah, I've sort of tried
So
to steer
slow down for
clear.
me there. Slow down for me there. What you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, teams that are able to get along and collaborate well tend to succeed together.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they get stuck trying to figure out, like, they get stuck on trying to figure out each other and they kind of miss the mark on the actual work sometimes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I just also feel that as we go along, there's less and less work done inside of a company that is 100% dependent on an individual. And if you really talk about the higher level stuff that's going on in a company, when we're trying hard new things, launching new products, building a new business, integrating a company that we've acquired, those things are so incredibly dependent on good, healthy collaboration that's where I like to be, or at least
Yeah.
paying really close attention to
So the
how the
team
client's
health,
performing.
the team health side of the equation.
Big fan of Patrick Lencioni. Big fan.
So what I'm taking away a lesson from you is that in your client selection, so I'm suggesting the part of how you maintain your own journey of joy and success is, and you said it earlier, you're pretty picky actually about the clients that you take on, and it may sound actually a bit selfish, but I've learned that that is not selfish at all, because if you understand your core customer, the kind of customers that you can affect, and bring yourself joy as well, you actually do a much better job for them. It's truly a win-win. So it's truly like, put your oxygen mask on before you help others. Same thing. So in your case, sounds like, you look for certain clients and you go, hey, these are the clients that I would enjoy working with, and you might do a better job with them.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought this up because as I heard the words coming out of my mouth, I thought, I hope that doesn't come across as arrogant or selfish, because what I say to people very specifically is, I don't feel like I would be successful helping you. I don't say, I think you've got problems that I don't want to deal with. I say, I don't think I would be successful in helping you. And
And
so,
that's probably true because, you probably have not developed that area of skill set that is needed to help those kind. You've kind of focused on this group of skill sets that really help a certain type of client. So when you throw, like, I'll share with you, I had a client a long time ago that I got into the session with them, and it turned out that it was a husband and wife team. And midway through the session, I began to realize that I was the therapist. And then after the end of the session, they thanked me and they said, when do we schedule the next one? And I said, we're not, we're not. Because they said, but you were helpful. I said, yes, I might have been helpful, but that's not my expertise. Like, I understand you guys are partners in the business, but there was so much more to that that is in your marriage that I just don't have the skill to decouple for you or uncouple for you to dive into. And so we didn't continue. But again, it wasn't because I didn't want to help him. It was because I really didn't feel equipped to deal with those kind of situations. And I felt like I barely succeeded my first session, even though the customer felt like I'd done a great job for them. But for me to continue with that client would have been hard for me, man. It would have brought me no joy, and I would have felt inadequate, even though they may have felt that it was worth the money.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've had situations like that where I've
Yeah,
had to go to the client and say, "Hey, this has been fun and interesting on a certain level, but I don't
yeah,
think this is a sustainable, great thing for you, Mr. Client, because I'm struggling to kind of have the impact that I would like to have,
yeah.
help you have, and
And
that I understood was important to you."
and I think that's a transferable lesson for our audience. It's like understand what you're gifted in, understand what you enjoy. Those two, I think, are quite similar. Well, sometimes you may have gifts in areas that you don't enjoy. Or maybe you try to do less of those, right? Work on the stuff that you enjoy, where you're gifted in. When those two connect, that's a wonderful thing. And then it's okay. It's okay to say no to things that you don't feel that you could be great at, or that you could be successful at, or that you would even enjoy.
I have to say, it's, I mean, I probably haven't, just to be fair, I probably haven't had more than half a dozen or so of those conversations over the years.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had a person look at me like, no, I mean, I generally, I think they sort of respect you putting that forward to say, look, I'm not just looking for work to do. I want to help people create impact in their environment. And if I don't think I'm going to be able to do that here, it's better that you try to find somebody else. For example, you know, a little bit of turnaround work over the years. It's not an environment where I feel great. I feel like where I've been most helpful to other people is when there's a really good, solid, stable business there that's trying to figure out how to get to the next level.
Yeah. One
And
step.
there's no shortage of them.
Yes. Yeah. That's wonderful. So, the other thing I want to explore with you is, I've known you for a long time and I can tell, and, the clients that you have, they view you as a thinking partner, not just an advisor or coach. How did you do that? Because to do that, you need to, there's what I call the trust gap, or you got to really close that trust gap, and people got to really think of you in that way. So how do you do that?
I mean, I hope I was maybe unknown to me working in that direction anyway. But I tell you what, when I came across the single line in Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner's The Leadership Challenge that said,
Yeah.
trust is the foundation of leadership, I had to take a step back and say, how trustworthy am I? And I feel I was always a trustworthy person, but I don't know that I necessarily put myself out there enough in a way to make other people feel that safe and secure with me. So I really think it was probably when I went out on my own and I really started to realize, you're not a brain on a stick anymore. These folks really want impact, and you have to leave them better off than you found them. And a big part of that is opening not just your mind, but it's opening your heart to people. I will tell you, Pat, and I've said this to the last couple of clients I've started out with, I'll just say to them on day one, I like to fall in love with my clients. And I hope I'm going to fall in love with you guys. Because if I fall in love with you guys, there's nothing I won't do to see you succeed.
Thank you. That's golden. That's a wonderful life lesson. So, hey, our podcast coming to an end. I want to thank you again. And this podcast this show is really to help CEOs have a more joyful and successful life. So I'd like to know, what last piece of advice would you like to leave with our audience to help them have a more joyful and successful life?
Love what you do and make sure everyone knows it.
Mm.
Some people like to stay guarded with their feelings. They keep it all up here, but there's a lot to be accomplished from that jumping off point.
Awesome.
Love what you do and let everybody know it.
Bryan, thank you so much. Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, I see that on a t-shirt. So thank you, Bryan, for being here with me today, sharing your perspective. It was awesome. And thank you, everyone, for listening to us today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with another leader, and join us next time for another conversation about what it takes to grow, lead, and succeed. Until next time, bye now.